everyone. So the first thing that I'm going to show you is a graphic organizer that I use with my students for writing. So we use this for their personal narrative writing, and we really focused on sequencing first, next, then, and last. So for this example, I give them a little bit of choice by writing about a time that they felt a certain emotion, and then they're able to tell me about that story, and they have the option to choose another emotion if they would like. So as far as the strengths that I feel like I have in this document, the online accessibility handbook, it's clean and organized. The colors aren't contrasting. There's nothing really distracting that's on this page for students. And I believe that the table is accessible due to its simplicity and format, even as far as the screen reader would go. As far as the universal design for learning, I feel like the worksheet would allow students to write or type. They could include pictures for their sequencing, so it kind of allows them to show their understanding with different formats or different medias, if you will. And honestly, they could even do it orally. I've had students that just kind of tell me their first, next, then, and last, and I help them with their labels or as far as their organization goes. For improvements on this document, I feel that as far as the online accessibility handbook goes and the screen reader video demonstration, I would need to change the heading and font style so that they would be read appropriately to students, especially using a screen reader. I also feel like I could have maybe included a link on this page if I was doing like an online class and I was teaching students online. If I include a link, then it could have an example of a graphic organizer filled out, maybe not one exactly like this one, but the format would be the same, just to give that example. And I feel like I could include on the page like a choose from the table below. Again, this is kind of more for students with the screenwriter that need that type of accessibility, so it doesn't just go to I will write about a time that I felt, and that way it almost sounds like they would have to list a time they felt all those feelings and emotions. But if I included right after that sentence starter, choose from the table below, then it would kind of just clarify the idea that they have to choose only one emotion to write about. And that would be used just kind of for all learners too, that it just makes it a little bit more clear. So for the other resource that I have, and just to kind of preface this, I really don't use a lot of PowerPoints or Google Slides with my students. I use an Active Inspire flip charts, but that program, it wasn't compatible with my computer. So this is just a PowerPoint kind of introducing the writing process for first grade, and I do use this with my students. So it's more of just a direct and kind of like a lecture style, and I end up printing these out and putting them around the classroom so that students can remember our writing process. So I'll start with this one similar. I'll start with the strengths. As far as the handbook goes, I feel like it is clean and organized, and I feel like if I go through, I numbered each step of the writing process that we use, and that way they just kind of, it clarifies even for a screen reader that would clarify, you know, step 1 is planning, 2 is drafting. I would kind of associate those numbers with the steps. And I feel like the colors are contrasting enough. However, in my strengths, I'm going to include a little bit of an improvement. I feel like the background could be a little bit distracting. Of course, I always try to find like fun clip art and fun backgrounds to use with my students, but in this case, I feel like the lines could be a little bit distracting, and especially for students who have trouble seeing and things like that, it could hinder them a little bit. And kind of from our chapter of rice, one more strength that I feel about this is it's a good asynchronous tool that students could go back to, especially with the inclusion of an outline. If I would include that as well, I feel like this would be an awesome tool, and I have a couple improvements that would make it even better, but it's just kind of nice to have a direct and explicit lesson, but then also include it for students to go back to so that they can use it at any time that they would like. So now on to my improvements. So a lot of these improvements came from the online accessibility handbook. I feel that I could definitely add links so I could have visual examples of a draft or ideas for graphic organizers for certain narrative, persuasive, or anything like that in the drafting part. So if I go to that slide, I feel that I could have added something a little bit more to that. And of course, I'm thinking of this as if I'm teaching an online course, so I feel that I could add alternative text to add more, and add more meaningful photographs that could be read to students. So right now I have kind of just like fun clip art here, and I like to do a lot of like what it looks like, so that we can, when I go over this with my students, we can talk about this is what it looks like. If you're drafting, you might need to talk to somebody, you might need to draw pictures, you might just be writing and brainstorming at your desk. Which I feel like maybe I could add some alternative text to explain that a little bit more. But maybe if I had a couple more photographs, just so they're very meaningful and the alternative text would read something that's pretty meaningful and it would make sense on that slide for students. And my last improvement that I have for this would probably just be to create an outline for my presentation. I know that that was something that was recommended, especially for PowerPoints, and it's something that I do not have created, so I feel like that would be the last thing I would do to improve this resource. Overall, I feel that both of my resources could use some more improvements to be accessible for all students, and I feel like including those improvements on this would not just make it accessible to those students with special needs, but kind of back to the UDL and things that Rice was saying, it would make it more accessible to all of my students. All right, thanks so much.